開會下，胡志偉議員先啦。
We'll resume the meeting, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. I only have one more question. I heard just now that this is going to be one bridge, even if it goes in different directions. However, there are two landlords. I don't know whether on one side it is Park Metropolitan or URA, and then on the other side it is the Highways Department. And I'm talking about daily cleaning. And maybe it is the Development Bureau, because after all, those departments are under you. Are you confident you can do good coordination? And if there is any poor management, where is the single contact point for the public to lodge complaints instead of having the public go to two departments? DS, thank you. We have to understand the nature of this footbridge. Actually, they are two footbridges. Even the URA footbridge, it will be managed by the URA, and the administration's footbridge will be managed by the government. But of course, as a resident, if you see rubbish on the footbridge, to whom you can take the complaint, and whether the cleaning would be best done by a contractor. We can go back and think about cooperation. Well, yes, I hope you can consolidate the management work. We have seen many projects with 2 to 3 landlords, and then you would call up one number and they say it's not their responsibility, and the residents have to make many calls. I hope after your internal discussion, you can report to us that you can coordinate your daily management, and that there will be one single way to tackle problems. Say, for example, heaven forbid that the elevator will break down. I believe in the Kwun Tong Town Center, the URA may have technicians who are resident in that town center. I just hope that there will be a fast and efficient way for the residents to take any problems or complaints that they may have with regard to this footbridge. Okay, we will look into that. Can you report to us? We can give you a written reply. Thank you. Mr. Jeremy Tam. I have a question on the usage rate. I think I asked a similar question at a previous meeting. What is your estimate of people going to Park Metropolitan and the Health Center building? How will the traffic be distributed? Thank you. I think I said just now that, well, I'd like to say more clearly the design of this bridge. This bridge will link up Matwa Street. Well, I can't say it can link up with Park Metropolitan because it is only going to link up with a 24-hour pedestrian link within the Park Metropolitan development. This will facilitate residents in Matwa Street and people coming out from Park Metropolitan. Therefore, the main users of the footbridge would be the 30,000 people in the community of Matwa Street, Hitwa Street, and Yutwa Street. So the footbridge is not mainly to serve Park Metropolitan. And we can look at some figures. We estimate that by 2026, there will be 1,900 people using this footbridge per hour. And there are just a few hundred people who would live in Park Metropolitan. Therefore, you can see that this footbridge is mainly to serve the Kwun Tong community, to increase accessibility, and to facilitate them when they need to visit community facilities. Okay, so you are implying that in enclosure 1, the dotted line would mean that since there is link up with 24 pedestrian link, people can go to Yutwa Street, and therefore you are saying that this is a district facility and you are not just to benefit Park Metropolitan and the health center patrons. Is that what you mean? Yes. There is another question. Actually, Mr. Au Nok Hin would like to ask that question, but he's not here, so let me ask it. Land resumption, para 25. You say that you don't need to resume land or do clearance, but creation of easements and other permanent rights and about 7 square meters of private land are required. In Note 4, you say that they are provided for the government to have the right to enter, occupy, or remain in the land for the purpose of carrying out the works. I understand why, because you have to work there. But how can you add that extra clause to people's land lease? And when you talk about private land, are you talking about Park Metropolitan? If you are, how can you add in that restriction in people's land lease without lease modification? How can you effect this, in other words, that you can gain right of access into private land? Thank you, Chairman. And the question. With regard to the connection point in the land lease, we have pointed out that Park Metropolitan has to provide a connection point. Now, why is it that in para 25 we have included a point on land requisition? As you can see, we do not require land resumption. And also, we do not need to do any land clearance. The 7 square meters of private land are going to provide easement and usage rights. And in the footnote, we say that we can enter into Park Metropolitan in order to do necessary management, maintenance, and repairs. When we gazetted the project, we already signified that there should be easements created, and there was no objection raised. Sorry, I'm not too familiar with the operation. Can you clarify? Gazetto is one thing, but at Park Metropolitan, there is a land lease, right? Now, you say you can gazette and then you can gain access into people's land. What about the land grant for Park Metropolitan? Would it be necessary to modify the land grant? Otherwise, you can always gazette and gain access into private land. CEDD, please allow us to continue with the reply, please. Thank you for the question. As we explained just now, in the land lease, there must be the reservation of a connecting point for us. So that is in the land lease. And this time around, we are only talking about an easement so that we can access the private land in question. This is only when our footbridge is to be repaired and maintained. We may need to conduct maintenance at the connection point. We have stated that need in the Gazetto of the notice. Well, I am now going to use my time in my second round, Chairman. I still don't understand. Well, it doesn't matter. You just press the button, right? We can start your next round, but you might be jumping the queue, but I don't think Pt2 would mind. Okay, Chairman, thank you. In the land lease of Park Metropolitan, of course, there is a clause stating that there must be the provision of a connecting point. But then in the land lease, it shouldn't have stated that there should be a 7 square meter easement for you to go inside to do maintenance, right? Of course, there isn't. Otherwise, you don't need to gazette it. The thing is, your right is not stated in people's land lease. And now you are telling me that as long as you gazette it to say that later on you would still need an easement for the purpose of maintenance. But the right of access is not in the land grant, unless you are telling me that in the land grant there is the clause stating that you must be given the right of access for future maintenance. But if that is the case, you wouldn't have had to gazette it. I don't know how the two relate to each other. Thank you for the question. We know that we need to have this 7 square meter easement because after doing the detailed design, we know we would need that kind of space. And through Gazetto, we are providing for this. In fact, this will connect with a 24-hour pedestrian link. We are not going to really use the land of the private owner as such. We are just borrowing the land. Sorry, did I mince my word so badly? Of course, I understand you need to gain access, but then I'm asking a legal point. I don't understand it. Please explain again. I think she will be able to explain it. Thank you for the question. Actually, this is not unique to this project. In simple terms, this is called an easement. In other words, we need to do maintenance and repair, and it's only then that we need to gain access into the boundary of the property, and we are just using it temporarily. I understand that. It is an easement. My question is, the land lease of that development protects the rights of the owner, and it is clear that they are asked to provide a connecting point, but they would not expect you to go into the area of the private land to do maintenance. And you have said just now that after detailed design, you found that you would need that kind of access in order to do maintenance. My question is very simple. Legally speaking, would that suffice? Because to me, it doesn't afford a lot of protection to the landowner. You understand me? In other words, as long as you gazette the easement, you can already go into the area of the private land to do maintenance. Of course, I know you need to do maintenance. I'm not discussing that point. I'm saying procedurally whether that would suffice. Thank you for the question. Why do we need to give a gazette notice? It is because they would have the chance to object, and it must be considered. And as I said, during Gazetto, we did not receive any objection. No, did you notify them in advance that there would be the Gazetto? Well, thank you. Gazetto requires a certain process. We would post up notices in the vicinity. No, not just the notices, but what about the landowner? Did you contact them directly? Well, I think they have an established procedure. If you are required to notify the landowner, you would, right? Chairman, what I want to say is, sometimes they would just post up a notice on a board somewhere, and they would call it a kind of notification. My question is, did you contact the landowner in question to tell them that you were going to gazette the notice? Thank you. We act according to established procedures and posted up notices in the vicinity. And we notified the district council. What about the landowner who was affected? There is no reason for you not to make direct contact. Sorry, please stand in the queue again, Mr. James Toh.
Chairman, which ordinance would give you such power of Gazetto? It's not the Land Resumptions Ordinance, right? This is in accordance with the Road Compensation Ordinance, Cap 370. Because of such works, you are jeopardizing the rights of the private development or private owners, and some of their rights within a specific time frame might be affected. So the nature is very specific. It will only affect owners of a certain property for a specific length of time, and the easements might be affected. according to the ordinance, do the owners have to be informed? Let's say if there are 100 owners, would they all have to be informed? When you replied to Mr. Jeremy Tam, you said you would put up notices outside and inform the district council. But would you issue direct notices on the specific rights affected? As I understand, we did not inform the owners. Is this not necessary under the ordinance? There's no need to thank me. Just give me an answer. Normally, we would carry out the procedure through the Lands Department. As I know, we did not inform the owners. Do we have anyone from the Lands Department here? I want an accurate answer. If there are requirements under the ordinance and you did not do it, how could we approve the funds? If this is not required under the ordinance, is this why you did not do it? Is that the case? Thank you. I can provide additional information on our procedures after the meeting. I'm not saying that you did not follow the procedures. Owners do not have to be informed under the ordinance. Can you give me a direct answer? I can offer extra information after the meeting. If we approve this item, can you inform the owners directly? Or would you not inform them until the works actually begin? Thank you. I would review our practice to see if it's appropriate or whether there are additional steps to be taken. So what is the answer? Can you not give an answer? And we would see if we need to inform specific owners. So are you well, let's assume that this is a requirement beyond the ordinance. You already exercise your rights and you already have the easement, so can you just inform the owners? I don't think this is all that difficult. Yes, this is something we can do. Next, Mr. Issue. Thank you. I would consider the issue on a need basis. And by 2026, the peak traffic would be 1,900 pedestrians per hour. As for the pedestrian crossing, there will be 800, so for a total of 2,700 pedestrians per hour. Kowloon East has a big population. For the $1.7 billion Yunlong footbridge and at Castle Peak Road near Kekyong Road, that crossing at a busy junction has 2,600 people or users per hour. If you are to build a footbridge when you have 26 or 2,700 pedestrians per hour, So shouldn't you build one at King York Road as well? Did you ever assess that if you don't build this footbridge, what is the level of service at the Mutwa Road junction? If you do not build this footbridge, what is the peak pedestrian flow at Mutwa Street? And please also tell me what the LOS will be. Ms. Pang, thank you. If we do not build this footbridge by 2026, there will be 2,000 to 3,000 pedestrians per hour during peak times. Can you be more specific, please? There are 3 crossings, so please tell me the specific numbers. For the spot between the lift and the island, there will be 2,514 in 2026, and towards Park Metropolitan there will be 1,388, and from the safety island there would be 3,222. What about the level of service? Would it be A, B, C, D, or E? I have no such information on hand. If you do not have the LLS information, these figures would be meaningless because we cannot put them in perspective. We have been on this item for an hour, so there's no use to dwell into these technical issues. At the Public Works Subcommittee meetings, you only spend 5 minutes, but you spend an hour here already at the Finance Committee. We have a number of members waiting to speak, and the item would likely not be voted on today, and I hope members can be more efficient with the use of time. Mr. Tony Chair. I hope this question has not been asked before. The footbridge is connected to the Park Metropolitan. You said you have the rights of access, and there is 24-hour access as well. For the building corridor, why is the alignment the way it is? Does the L-shaped design facilitate pedestrians? Is this already confirmed? The item has been confirmed, and so does the design, and the 24-hour pedestrian link is already in use. The purpose of this link is not to facilitate residents of Park Metropolitan, as some members suggested. There are a lot of residents along Yutwa Street. Currently, they have to use a long slope, and the pedestrian link can allow these residents to pass through the development so that they can reach Hipwall Street and Mutwa Street, and by the same token, Mutwa Street and Hipwall Street residents can reach public facilities by using this link. I understand, but this is a this would lengthen the time needed to reach the destinations. There is a section taken up by the URA in the connection point where the number 2 is labeled. Why don't you ask them to connect their facility to the main footbridge? When the project was planned, the idea was to have two separate footbridges, one built by the URA, one by the government. And in 2009, we held a design competition, and there was an idea to connect these two footbridges. That's why the two are connected in the middle. This is a bit weird from an engineering perspective, and there would be management issues. The URA would take care of their footbridge while the government would manage the government-built footbridge. And there would be management issues in the middle, and there could be complicated issues. Some members suggested whether there would be collaboration in the future after the footbridges are completed. This is something we will consider, so we will not see two separate management authorities. Mr. Jonathan Ho, I'm very surprised why we are dwelling on this item for so long. This is a district-level footbridge. I don't see any reason for filibustering, and I don't see why this has to drag on for so long. I hope members would pay a visit themselves before they speak. They should not lead people into thinking that this footbridge is built for a specific residence. The passage or link would not benefit Park Metropolitan residents, and there is no lift connecting to the footbridge. This is the third time we have said this. I don't know why we still have to waste time on this. If the footpath outside Park Metropolitan is removed in the future, the residents might start using this footbridge. But if you do not remove the pedestrian crossing, I'm sure Park Metropolitan residents would simply cross the road if they want to go to the MTR. So the footbridge brings convenience to many residents and not just for the residents of one residence. And the land lease and deeds involved would stipulate the management of the footbridges. I believe some members do not understand the design and structure of the footbridge. As a Kwun Tong District Councillor, the District Council arranged a visit for us. I hope members would take a look for themselves.
This is the third time we have discussed this, and please do not waste more time. I can't see any reason for filibustering. Chairman, I hope you will exercise your chairman's authority and not allow any delay in our meeting's progress. Even at the District Council, the discussion was about turning a staircase into an escalator. There is already a lift, and an escalator would just help to improve the situation. It's a very narrow space. I don't think there is more space for another lift. But I believe all other questions have been answered. It just boggles my mind, Chairman. I'd like to appeal to members. Please look at the fact that only 5 minutes were spent on this item at PWSC. If you really cared so much about these projects, please join the PWSC and don't dwell on individual items here at the FC. Please do not go into details or minor legal points. Please do not stand in the way of the FC's progress. Mr. Holden Chow, Chairman, it's a very simple project. but we have spent so much time on it. I must clarify something. Just now I heard Mr. Eddie Chu mention a lot of questions about the people flow. It's all right for him to get figures, but of course people flow is one of the important factors for considering the building of a footbridge. But I also think that you must have regard for the objective environment. Say there may be a slope, perhaps it is not convenient, perhaps you want to protect people from the elements. I hope you will not just place emphasis on one thing, because Mr. Eddie Chu was dwelling on people flow and figures. It's all right for you to ask questions, but please do not make it out as if people flow figures would be the only factor for building a footbridge. I believe it should be a basket of factors, and we must seek to facilitate residents. And this is a principle I must clarify. And let us not dwell more on people flow figures. I think you are just delaying the progress. Ms. Alice Mack, I will be brief. I need to declare that I am a non-executive director of the URA. Well, this has nothing to do with the URA, but I don't know why some members seem to think that this is going to benefit URA. In fact, the two housing estates have seen occupation intake. Well, if you don't have this footbridge, maybe there will be a small impact on them, but I don't think it will be a big impact anyway on the URA redevelopment project. As the DS said, the impact would be greater for people who live on the hill. I understand some members will have association in their mind, and they will say that this is going to benefit the URA, the developer, and the private housing estate, and the best thing is not to spend the money to benefit other people. But if you know the area well, and if you know the history of this project, you will know that this pedestrian link system was part of the entire redevelopment project. That is, we must not forget people who live on the hill, so they can have accessibility to come down to ground level. If you don't do it, I can't see any impact on the URA. Well, maybe yes. Those residents, of course, are Kwun Tong residents as well. And there is a long way to go before we will have phase 4 and phase 5 of the redevelopment project. So is it that this pedestrian link system will benefit the redevelopment project so much? I would say that if anyone will benefit, it is those who live on the hill. If you are proposing not to build it, then Chairman, why don't we just put this item to the vote so they can object and they can show people who live on the hill that they would be held accountable. If they don't want to benefit other people, then let us put this to the vote and let them object to the item. Let us not waste more time, because the more questions you ask, the more you are exposed, because you don't know because you know so little about the project. Well, it's easy for you to associate this project with other things, but this is not going to benefit anyone who is living there. I hope we can make a decision on the project as soon as possible. Mr. Oh Nok Hin. Chairman, I did not want to take anybody to task. I had wanted to just speak for a few seconds. But what are you doing, pro-establishment camp members? Are you saying that asking questions is a problem? I live in Kwun Tong. I will use this footbridge. Why are you so noisy? Well, come back to this item. I think they are outrageous. They are using their speaking time to say that we are filibustering, but we are really serious with our questions. Lastly, I will ask a very short question. In fact, I was trying to follow up on Mr. Jeremy Tam and Mr. James To's question, and that is para 25 of the paper. This is about a government footbridge linking up with private ownership. As you said in footnote 4, you need to enter, occupy, or remain in the land for management, maintenance, and repair. So you need easements and other permanent rights. In fact, you should talk to the landowner concerned, unless this is already written into the land lease. If it is not so, you may need to enter into a separate agreement. I thought that this would be an interesting case. If you know about link, you will know that private owners can be very unsympathetic. But since this is about private ownership, I'd like to know more about the mechanism. Well, you answered Mr. Jeremy Tam and Mr. James To, and I'd just like to say that I never meant to filibuster. I don't know who you are pointing the finger to. I'm a stakeholder in Kwun Tong, and I don't want you to lightly accuse people of filibustering. Mr. Jeremy Tam, 3 minutes. Chairman, I'd like to clarify a few points. First, I support the project. Don't think that I object to it. Secondly, I can see 2 members from Kowloon East. They are district councillors. I'd like to know why I used some time to argue one point. If you go to footnote 4, they are saying that they need to gain the right to enter for future maintenance. Now, why did I want to speak on this point? I just noticed this point, and I was saying why you would be able to enjoy the right by going into private land for future maintenance. And the administration said that they gazetted it. But I think there is still an unreasonable point, because you may gazette it. However, you may be doing this unilaterally, and then you are saying you can already create permanent rights in private land for future maintenance. I'm not arguing the need for future maintenance. Of course, you need to do maintenance. But the administration said that when they wrote the land lease, they never thought about the need to access private land. And what I'm most unhappy about is that the administration said that they did not contact the private owners. In other words, residents in Park Metropolitan were not informed that there would be this gazettal, and indeed they must allow government officials to go into their private land for maintenance. As I said, I'm not arguing about maintenance, but I'm saying that there is insufficient protection for private land rights. I dealt with a case in Tung Chung a few years ago. It is said that there would be PRH, and a notice was posted up in the vicinity, and to say that if you have any problem with the PRH development, you should speak up. However, why would people go into a site next to your housing estate for no reason? And the administration always posts up notices in the area of their own work site. And here, this is a more serious case, because you are affecting private owners, and you don't even contact the management office after you have gazetted your easements. I hope the 2 district councillors would understand what I was targeting. I spoke for 2 rounds, and I'm saying that it is a problem if you don't inform the private owners. As I said, I would support the paper, but I'm requiring the administration to issue a letter, hopefully within a week, to inform the management office of Park Metropolitan that you gazetted this, at what time and where would these 7 square meters will be, and how maintenance will be done in the future. I hope no members would object to my proposal, because you are affecting people's private land rights. Mr. Wilson Orr. Thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. Jeremy Tam's point is clear. I have been in the room, and I have been listening to members. In fact, I am also a directly elected member from Kowloon East, as you are, and we are all clear that this link system will be very helpful to the entire town center. I think you have a point there. I hope the departments will deal with it. But I would also hope that we will not waste more time in talking about this system. When we went to the town center, many residents asked why this has taken so long. I'm very happy to hear from you that you support the project. I thank you for it. But I do hope that you will give us a helping hand, because the residents in Kwun Tong have waited for this for very long. Okay, I have to make a decision here. Whoever would like to speak, please press the button and I'll draw a line there. Mr. Jonathan Ho. I would like to give some time for the department to respond. I was the subject of easement as well, because my housing estate would have to give up some land for the purpose of managing the future Tseung Kwan O Lam Tin Tunnel. I myself experienced it, and if indeed you live in Park Metropolitan, you should be able to know about it. Thank you. As I explained, according to the roads use compensation and requirement ordinance, we have done the gazetto and we would be informing the individual owners. But we must have the funding support from LegCo first before we can issue that kind of notice to individual owners. Okay, so before construction, you would send registered mail to individual owners that you would be creating these easements so that you could do maintenance and repair. I believe no one would object, because first, you are not at that stage yet. It is not that you are resuming people's land. It is just that at a certain level, say for example, underneath my housing estate, you are going to build the Tseung Kwan O Lam Tin Tunnel, and therefore you would like to create an easement. I hope members will understand the procedure instead of saying that land will be resumed. It's nothing like that. Please do not frighten the residents, because this is being live broadcast. If you have no more questions, I will put PWSC 2018-19-14 to the vote. Someone has asked the division, and the bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
各位同事，我哋即將表決呢個呢，就係觀塘市中心重建計劃興建分。
We are voting on this item, which is the provision of grade separated pedestrian linkages for Kwun Tong Town Centre redevelopment. We now proceed to the vote. Voting is closed. The results are shown. 34, 1 against, 0 abstention. The proposal is carried. Next, FCR 2018-19, number 20, revitalization scheme, revitalization of the Lady Hotong Welfare Center into Lady Hotong Welfare Center Eco-Learn Institute, 28 QW, and item 29 QW, revitalization scheme, revitalization of number 12 School Street into Taihang Fire Dragon Heritage Center, and item 30 QW, revitalization of the old dairy farm senior staff quarters into the Populum Farm. These would be upgraded to Cat A at estimated cost of $42 million, $42.3 million, and $58.7 million in MOD prices respectively. I declare that I'm an independent non-executive director of the Bank of East Asia, and we have Ms. Joey Lam, Deputy Secretary for Development, and her team. Mr. Gary Fan. I request separate scrutiny and voting for these three items. I'd like to thank the government for attending and arranging representatives from the Heritage Revitalization Scheme. For the three items, 28 QW, 29 QW, and 30 QW, by comparing these items, I realize there is a need to raise certain questions. And for 29 QW, I have questions about the Tai Hang Fire Dragon Heritage Center. And by comparing these three items, for item H, furniture and equipment, the cost is relatively high. It makes up 18% of the total costs, compared with the Lady Hotong Welfare Center and the Old Dairy Farm Senior Staff Quarters revitalization. The cost proportion of that item is only 3%, 4% respectively, but for the Fire Dragon Heritage Center, the percentage is 18%. We are talking about $7.7 million. I'd like to know why the cost on furniture and equipment is so much higher than the two other items. Deputy Secretary, thank you for the question. Under the revitalization scheme, the items all differ by nature. So for the two other items, they involve public participation, training, etc. But for the Fire Dragon Heritage Center, it's for exhibition purposes. And whenever we have exhibitions, we want to make them as appealing as possible. So the furniture and equipment would include innovative designs, 3D displays, and screens. There is also virtual reality equipment. And there are also 2 catering areas and kitchens. Therefore, a higher budget is needed for furniture. Thank you. Chairman, I think that is the crux of the issue. You talked about VR equipment and 3D equipment. why are they included under furniture and equipment instead of creating a separate item? The venue is primarily for exhibitions, and for the heritage revitalization scheme or the partnership scheme for historical heritage, we need to know the nature of the items, and this way we can gauge the cost effectiveness. Were there any precedents in which such expenditure are included under furniture and equipment? And in the future, if I am to build war game facilities or an indoor ski park, the expenditure would be put under furniture and equipment. Would that happen? If the people writing the proposals are not aware of the arrangement, they might be put in a disadvantage. And this is our normal practice in terms of the breakdown. And as we wrote in the paper, the Fire Dragon Heritage Center will have an exhibition area, and there will be interesting exhibits. And last, we said that at the Bridges Street market there would be an exhibition hall, or the news expo. I would extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Ms. Alohin. I thought the meeting would be ending soon, but still I have something to say about these projects. First of all, I support the project as a whole, but for the Old Dairy Farm Senior Staff Quarters, for the architectural style of the building, there is historical or heritage value, and the government said that the wooden tiles are not robust, and they must be rebuilt, and there would be mitigation measures involved. Can the government give us details of these measures and the relevant requirements so that we can know about the Development Bureau's arrangements? I want to ask about another project as well. For the Tai Hang Fire Dragon Heritage Center, one major concern is whether the restaurant would be sustainable. This is something Ms. Sanya Chan has said before. I often visit Tai Hang, and as we know, rents in Tai Hang is high, and there is intense competition between restaurants. We are now spending public money on revitalization, and there are food and beverage facilities inside. Very often we have to consider whether the restaurant would be competitive in the neighborhood and whether it will be popular. Of course, I'm not very familiar with the Tai Hang area, according to the meeting minutes, I do not find this arrangement too justified. And according to the organizer, there would be talks and there would be F&B facilities. I just want to see a more holistic plan for the Heritage Center. Thank you very much. For the Heritage Impact Assessment, it's available online, so we are happy to provide the document. As for the competitiveness of the restaurant, of course, we would try to do our best. So I would invite Mr. Wong to give more. I do not want to see just the assessment. I want to know about your views. The Heritage Center has a dedicated team to deal with the F&B facilities, and they would offer views on how the F&B would be run. According to the experience of the Welfare Association, we have no experience in F&B. So we are now studying the plans, and we would consider the economic sentiments. And if we have the Fire Dragon Heritage Center, Taihang would become lively, and I'm not worried about business or competition.
I hope you can give us a written response so we are clearer about the message. Can you consider doing that? Next, Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I support all these items. Actually, the Commissioner for Heritage explained these items to us in private, and we had a very fruitful exchange. But I thank Mr. Gary Fan for his observations, because I missed that point. And that is at the Tai Hang item, furniture and equipment took up a much bigger percentage. Last time I asked the question, the costly item was the elevator. But indeed, furniture and equipment takes up a big advantage. And you mentioned VR facilities. I'd like to know whether this is in the paper. If yes, where is it? If not, can you supplement a paper to let us know the breakdown for furniture and equipment? This will help us make lateral comparisons when we scrutinize these items. I am also very concerned about the News Expo because there was the slope and the elevator. You said in that item the furniture and equipment element is also rather high. Maybe you can explain it. And if you talk about VR facility, does it mean there will be quick wear and tear? Say the service life will be just 2 years. What about the sustainability of this facility? Because you only support them for 2 years. I thought it would be hardware. But I don't know whether VR, well, you can call it hardware, I suppose, but would that be covered by your maintenance and repair subsidy? Say if 2 years later there is no way to repair it and they have to be replaced, does it mean it will be left to the NGO? Yes. Thank you. In the paper, we did not list the items of furniture, but I agree with Mr. Fan. We would take on board members' view and we would give more information in the future. As to whether the facility would be broken after 2 years, that shouldn't be the case. And in the first 2 years, the government will support maintenance and repair by a subsidy. After the first 2 years, the partner will continue to operate the facility and they will have to try to achieve self-sufficiency. They should be able to furnish the funds for daily operation and maintenance. Well, I'd like the partner to say a few words. Sometimes the partners are embarrassed to speak up. Are you confident about future maintenance costs? Say if the facility will cost 7 million and VR will take up a few millions, but you also have the walls, the roads. If indeed the technological equipment will have a short lifespan, will the partner be confident that you would have enough money that you can afford to do maintenance? Can I defer to Mr. Wang Ki-kwok to answer the question? Thank you, Chairman. The Tai Hang Fire Dragon Heritage Center will be very small in size. The space that we can use to display a lot of information will not be a lot. And we need to use technological support, including 3D projectors. Well, yes, I have heard that already. I'm talking about future maintenance. Once I know. The first installment should be rather expensive. But since technology is developing fast, I believe maintenance will not be costly. I'm sure it will be affordable. This is how we see it. Well, I'm really asking the question for you. If you can say you can afford it. Well, I don't know much about computers, but I believe we can afford it. Thank you very much. Mr. Ted Hui, I speak in support of the 3 items. With regard to heritage, I'd like to hear more from the Secretary. Since this is a rehabilitation project or revitalization project, the partners will be running the projects. I hope these will not become small kingdoms for the partners. I hope the history, the story of the place will be exhibited. And the characteristics of these developments should be also well displayed. You say the Lady Hotong Center will become an eco-learn institute. But can this continue? How much will be spent on the history of Sir Hotong and Lady Hotong? And what would be the meaning of this welfare center to the historical era? The same applies to the School Street revitalization scheme and also the dairy farm staff quarters. In other words, how can you make sure that the partner will really run the scheme as a revitalization scheme so that it is meaningful to the public? You say there will be a reception area, multi-purpose rooms or exhibitions. But as you know, in other partnership schemes, sometimes they do not do a good job. They will just erect a board to tell the history and then the entire place is devoted for another purpose. So how can you monitor the running of these facilities? I totally agree with your observation. Under the revitalization scheme, the partner NGOs must allow a lot of space to be devoted to the display of the story of the place. Like the Lady Hotong Welfare Center, there will be a time tunnel and exhibition galleries to showcase the footprint of Sir Hotong and how important he was to the history of his time. An exhibition will not suffice, but from time to time, there should be guided tours and talks for people to understand the history of the place. And also, at Lady Hotong Welfare Center, there will be Chinese medicine consultation for residents of the district. And at the dairy farm, there will be oral history sessions. Our Commissioner for Heritage will ensure that this will be done. If they don't do it, we will assess the partner NGO's operation ability and we will issue advice to them. Well, I'd just like to remind the Development Bureau again that when we talk about history and culture, the public must be able to use the buildings. And then, by using the buildings, they should be able to see history in a 3D manner. You mentioned the Bridget Street News Expo. We said the same thing. It should not just be a museum. It must be three-dimensional, and it must be closely linked to the community and allow people to participate so that the history of the place will be displayed. Thank you. We understand it. Mr. Gary Fan. Just now, Ms. Joey Lam did not have time to answer my question. Now she can have the time to do it. In the paper, you don't show it, but with regard to furniture and equipment, Ms. Joey Lam talked about display and interaction. For Hotong and the Tai Hang items, they are different in nature. But when you talk about 3D and VR, well, they are related to both display and interaction. But the paper only talks about display. So the macro issue is, when you conduct this revitalization scheme, what is the criteria for funding? Is it that for proposals to be made by the NGOs, or can NGOs just make the decision to do VR so that you have not included that in the paper to the Legislative Council? Why have you dealt with the writing of the paper this way? And later on, you say there may be a change. Now, does it mean that you are going to change the clauses of this partnership program? Mr. Commissioner, thank you. In simple terms, under the partnership scheme, there will be an advisory committee assessing the proposals. It depends on what the proposal is like. And then our NGO partner will have to engage consultants and engineers to look into the possible costs for realizing the proposal. We have heard Mr. Gary Fan, and in future, we will put more information under F&E when we seek funding for these projects. As the DS said, the activities and the proposals are mostly in the paper, but we are happy about this view and we will do better next time. Can I continue? I'd like to ask for certain lateral figures. You have a breakdown for building works and building services. They are separate. And then the sum shows that at Tai Hang, the per square meter cost will be way beyond that of the other two projects. Therefore, I have asked this question about F&E. I hope you will give clearer information so that members will not be misled when we read the papers. If the nature of the project is different from the average project, I think you are duty-bound to let us know and indicate it to us, instead of having the paper pass through PWSC and then when we see the figures that we can see the difference. That is not satisfactory. Thank you. This is a very valid point, and we will continue to improve, and we'll give more details under the expenditure breakdown. Dr. Chang Chung-tai has pressed the button. Who else would like to speak? Dr. Chang. Well, I don't have enough time. I only have 2 more minutes. Unless you ask a very simple question, or else you will have to come back next time. Dr. Chang, a short point. About the Tai Hang Fire Dragon Heritage Center. Will there be further synergy with the Kai Phong Association in future? Talking about the Fire Dragon Heritage, many old Kai Fongs will go back to train people before Mid-Autumn Festival. I don't know whether this Heritage Center will work together with old Kai Fongs who might have left the district. Now that you are going to have the Heritage Center, you might like to build up a community network to revitalize the heritage. Secondly, you say hopefully the cafeteria or theme cafeteria can reach a fiscal balance after 2 years. But as you know, they are facing a lot of competition in the vicinity. Do you think you are too optimistic in asking them to achieve fiscal balance within 2 years? What is the market positioning, for example, for this theme cafeteria? You only have a few seconds. Yes, for the first question, there will be synergy. Secondly, Mr. Au has asked the question, will give supplementary information. Okay, no other questions? I'll put the FCR paper 20 to the vote. I'm of the view that the majority of members voting are in support. The paper is endorsed. Thank you.